So, Max, we're here. We've broken it down historically, what the banking cartel's done. They bought the world through fraudulent derivatives. Now they're telling us that they're our masters because they bought off our politicians and they signed us on to their debts. I mean, it's completely asinine. Their only hope is to somehow sell us on that we're guilty and we owe it. And so now I'm seeing the talking point floated that anybody who's against the Federal Reserve, anybody that wants to audit the Fed, anybody who supports Ron Paul, they're the new terror threat. And Biden is saying they're going to hit us. So it's pretty clear they're getting ready for a false flag to be blamed on the people, maybe an attack against the Federal Reserve or something. And then the stock market drops 2,000 points and they say, oh, Billy Bob Johnson of the Tea Party did it. He's the reason we had a depression. I mean, they're looking for something like that. While at the other angle that you mentioned, they've got Rick Perry coming in, trying to co-opt and saying, why, absolutely. Ron Paul says get rid of the Fed. I say arrest them. Of course, that's all talk, but this shows how far the awakening process, the education process has gone. I mean, is this not an incredibly positive sign that people are actually talking about the real problem now, the banker occupation?
Yeah, and on the global level, it's resonating on the central bank level, and it's resonating in Venezuela because they now want 99 tons of gold that's stored for them in London delivered to them, the physical stuff. And here's the great thing about that, is that the Bank of England really outsources that to J.P. Morgan, and J.P. Morgan doesn't have it. So they have to go into the open market to buy it. So Venezuela is doing Visa Gold what we were hoping to do with J.P. Morgan by buying silver. But they're doing it with gold. They're saying we want all of our gold. But the fact is that the big banks like J.P. Morgan have sold gold that they don't have, and they have to go into the open market to buy the gold, and that's one reason why gold is now getting almost to the point of being in a parabolic upward trajectory where it'll go from 2,000, quite a bit higher rather quickly. Because all these banks that have sold gold that they don't own are being forced to buy in the open market. And when all the players know that there's a forced buyer, then they jump in and they get in front of that front train, and it's self-feeding, and it becomes what's called parabolic, and you have this enormous move.
That's the drum you've been beating for several years, that they're all in there naked shorting silver and gold, and if you take physical possession, that will short-circuit them. Do you think Chavez is grabbing their gold because he knows that there could be a military move against him and a confiscation of it like Gaddafi, or is he doing it to call their bluff?
He wants the gold because he realizes that the paper money era is finished. And he's also nationalizing all the gold mines in Venezuela, and he wants the physical stuff delivered. And this is what's happening around the world. Central banks, for the first time in 30 years, are buying gold. It's remarkable that back in the 2000-2001 period, Gordon Brown, who was the exchequer of the exchange in London at the time, actually sold half of Britain's gold. He sold 300 tons in the open market at what it amounts to $240 an ounce, the historic low for the post-war period. And he just basically got rid of half of Britain's gold at the lowest price imaginable. And now he looks like a complete idiot.
Max, stay there. Max, I want to get into the big enchilada here, though. So you've accurately diagrammed what's happened so far. And we're talking about France and Germany going into a big crisis. This is the final move to hold those countries hostage to the private banking cartel and set up a private financial EU union, which is the genesis of the Bank of the World that you talked about, that the bankers will sell as the solution. You talked about that on one of our Infowars.com special news reports last week. And so here it is. And the Daily Mail, even Reuters and others, did call it a super Euro financial consolidation, where the finance ministers themselves, bought and paid for by the banksters, become the dictators of Europe. Continue breaking that down for us.
Well, I mean, am I allowed to use the phrase Fourth Reich? Because last year in November of 2010, I did a special report on RT, and I outlined that the collapse in the European banking system was setting up a situation where you would seek a European bond market or a coordination of all the European banks, and that it would all be run out of Berlin. And this is a Fourth Reich. And now the Mail article you just quoted, the headline of that article is "Welcome to the Fourth Reich," because this is what's happening now. It was the success after 3 times failure by Germany to control all of Europe, because the entire system is going to be when Deutsche Bank and Societe Generale go bankrupt this week or next week, the solution will be to bring in Eurobonds to roll that debt up, as I've been saying now for years, to a new Eurobond. It plays into the New World Order kind of thinking, but it's a step before you have the New World Order. You'll have the new European order, which will be run out of Berlin. And so all that debt will be rolled up into a new Eurobond, and then it'll be restructured and resecuritized, and the banks will make another huge round of huge fees, and then it'll be turned into 30, 40, 50-year debt, and the interest rate will be low, of course, and the ECB and the Deutsche and the Bundesbank, the old German central bank, this will be the new European-wide central bank, and they will effectively have this European-wide government that was not elected, that they put together themselves, that'll be running Europe, and you've got one step removed then from the same thing happening in North America and Asia as we head toward the New World Order, as you put it. But this is the penultimate step toward New World Order. It happened this week with France and Germany agreeing or talking about having a dual governance system and combining their economies in a way that's completely outside of any election or a referendum by any of the underlying citizens.
And again, by penultimate, next to the paramount. So the next level. In fact, we say that in Obama Deception and Fall of the Republic. We describe how they would create global crises and currencies, implode each region, set up banking dictatorships over those, which will then merge into the Bank of the World, which the Financial Times, Time Magazine, Newsweek are all pushing as a solution. Hey, you know those big secretive bankers that did all this? They've got a solution. They're going to rule everything now. Doesn't that sound great? We're going to come back and continue with where this will lead on the other side with Max Keiser. And then we're going to take some of your phone calls on the other side. But yes, there's the Daily Mail headline. Welcome to the Fourth Reich. And it's all out of crises. Rise of the Fourth Reich, how Germany is using the financial crisis to conquer Europe. Stay with us. There's the Daily Mail. I saw just scores of other newspapers in Europe and the United States with the same headline. Rise of the Fourth Reich, how Germany is using the financial crisis to conquer Europe. But more than that, Germany's the biggest contributor to the, quote, bailouts, which are really consolidations. And there's been many founders of the EU that have bragged, we've quoted them in our films, saying the euro was set up by the banking cartels to bring countries into receivership. So to say that Germany itself is leading this new Reich, I don't really agree with that, or France either. The big mega banks are using the power of those countries' economics to dominate the others while transferring the power, as was reported yesterday, to a new super economic order. You can, in fact, search that term for folks. A new super economic order where the finance ministers, all revolving door employees of the big mega banks, literally run the countries. That's why they're saying now in Greece and other areas, their countries, their people don't run anything. Their parliaments run nothing, like a third world country that signed on to the IMF or World Bank. But again, most of this debt is not owed by the people. Depending on the estimates I've seen, on average, it's above 90% is actually derivatives that are fraudulent. What is the path here, Max Keiser? Where will the establishment, the global banking occupation, as you dub it, what is their goal? What are they going to try to do versus what should we do to counter them?
Well, just to follow up on what we were saying in terms of this new Euro bond and global Euro, universal Euro bank, another part of the urgency to this is what's happening in the Swiss franc, because the Swiss franc is running away, in value against the dollar and the euro. It's up 40, 50%. And this is not helping Switzerland. It's hurting their export market. So as soon as they get this new Euro bond off the ground, I am making this prediction, you will see a peg of the Swiss franc to this new euro bond banking, this new configuration.
Speak up for me, Max.
Yeah, you'll see a peg from the Swiss franc to this new. There's an urgency to it because the Swiss franc is running completely out of control on the upside, and it's hurting the Swiss, economy.
Well, that was my next point. They tried to devalue it, as you know, yesterday, and that made investors only rush in more and greedily buy it.
Yeah, they also outlawed short selling of bank stocks in Europe, and that did not stop the collapse today. That's very, very telling. It shows that the speculative frenzy to go after these banks and their inherent weakness is enormous, and that's why now the talk is that a French bank will go bankrupt, and it will require now a huge global response.
Now, Max, this sounds like a snake eating itself because a lot of these big mega banks, I mean, this is the core of the globalist system, and yes, they're using the crisis to get even more power, but their own structure is being destroyed in the process. Have they bitten off more than they can chew? Were they irrationally exuberant themselves? Did they become delusional? Did they get delusions of grandeur? Could this be the end of these people?
Well, they're killing off the competition. So, for example, on Wall Street now, you got rid of Bear Stearns, you got rid of Lehman Brothers, you got rid of all the competition. So when they set up these big deals, like when they take Facebook public or Groupon public, which incidentally has been exposed as a massive Ponzi scheme, only one or two banks get that deal. Only one or two banks are trading on the inside stock transactions. So this is all about consolidation toward just having a few global players. And they're getting rid of the competition. This is extremely anti-competitive. That's the worst element of this of all. And that's the point that a leader like in the U.S. should be making first and foremost. Essentially, this is anti-competitive. The bailouts create too big to fail, which is the very definition of anti-competition. So that's their goal.
Which is too big to get in trouble. So you concur with my analysis. This has all been designed to consolidate things down to just a handful of mega banks and a few families. And in the aftermath, it'll destroy the economy. How do we beat these people? Just continue to point out the fraud, point out the Ponzi scheme. I mean, I have an article here in the Austin American-Statesman today with a little $75 million Ponzi scheme, former Triton CEO guilty in fraud case, and he did stuff, here they break down, that's mild compared to what J.P. Morgan Goldman Sachs is doing. I mean, that's what Madoff was right when he said, look, the whole stock market's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, at the end of the day, this Kurt Barton here in Austin and Bernie Madoff are only trying to do what the big boys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are trying to get down to the two or three, only the biggest players, but you'd expect them to do that. That's what you expect happens in an economy, but that's why you need regulation, because even Adam Smith talked about this in Wealth of Nations in 1776, that book was published, and he said, the animal spirits, or the competitive spirits, need to be constantly and vigilantly monitored because, as he put it, if you put two businessmen in a bar, they will collude. That's their nature. So you must be vigilant on the regulatory side. And this is something that for 20 years, all the regulations have been deregulated, and it was sold to us as a way to grow the economy. It did for a while grow the real estate market, and so people looked the other way until the real estate market collapsed, and people were left worse off than when they started, and now we're back to the fundamental question of, well, shouldn't these bankers be regulated? That's the fundamental question.
Yeah, they haven't even brought back Glass-Steagall that we got after the Depression, so here's the issue. They're not bringing the regulation back in. The public is waking up, though, and so it's two freight trains in collision course. If they continue these policies for another 2 years, as they've announced, giving themselves free money while blocking and the Federal Reserve paying banks not to lend to Main Street, what is going to happen?